Hi, my name's Eric. I'm one of the guys who's just completed Train the Trainer, and I've found the 6 sessions incredibly helpful. The content has allowed me to think about asking helpful questions, to develop a culture in my groups where people are learning and being vulnerable, and to train planters to plan, implement, and sustain gospel growth.
The past 12 weeks or so have been incredible. The material we went through has been brilliant. The online sessions have been great. I, up to this point, have existed in largely the kind of teacher-preacher mode, where when I'm trying to communicate or teach something, it's usually delivered with me just speaking at a group of people, and them listening and hopefully absorbing some of what I've had to say. This
material has really challenged me, and I just made an announcement just 2 weeks ago at the church service that we're going to revamp the church's training program, and we're going to move into much more of discussions and application, and where they are really discussing these things and putting into practice these principles that we've been learning here.
It's encouraging to understand that it's not our job as trainers to simply lecture and teach the material, but to create a learning environment in which all of the participants engage and work collectively in order to achieve new information that can be immediately applied in the ministry context.
I remember one of the phrases that stuck, it's still stuck in my mind. It is that, and it is pure gospel, is that the transformation, the church planter transformation, is not depend on us. It's depend on Christ's work.
We always have started our sessions with applying the gospel to our hearts. We can only teach people as deep as we go ourselves. So as we have been together in this great fellowship with wonderful men, and it's been encouraging for me to be with you, and also as I've seen you apply the gospel to your hearts, and it has taught me how to apply the gospel to my heart as well.
You know, I came thinking I'm actually a pretty good trainer, and then I go, actually, I think I was a pretty decent teacher, but I knew nothing about training. And after coming through this, I see such a big contrast between just teaching and training, that there are two different goals. Teaching is part of training, but you can teach and yet not train. And so after going through this with you guys, I really feel at least like the concepts are so much more clear.
It's also provided me with a cohort of like-minded pastors who want to start gospel movements in their cities. And as we share our experiences and the skills that we're developing, it's really encouraging me to continue to spur on to see more people come to know Jesus in my city.
The vision of City Europe is to create movements of the gospel in the cities of Europe. The vision basically describes why we exist. Why do we exist? Well, we do exist because we feel called to the cities of Europe to create movements of the gospel there through church planting. The 21st century is a time when more and more people live in cities, and we see that at the same time, church feels less and less able to do church or to apply the gospel into a young, urban, post-Christian, post-modern, post-secular society. And we do feel called to go to those places and to plant new churches. This is what City was all about from the beginning. Why we exist, why we started what we started. Because some leaders felt called to go to urban places in Europe to create movements of the gospel. Through church planting, this is our very specific contribution. We think a movement of the gospel is more than church planting in the city, but we feel called to contribute the planting of healthy new churches, then in collaboration with the existing churches to seek a movement of the gospel in the city. Our dream, basically, so what we dream and pray about is that we want to see revival. Revival in every city in Europe, in every country. And we do believe if we started in the cities, then it will spread out through the whole country, through the whole Europe. And this is what we do. We do train and mentor and equip and coach people who become church planters, who then create churches in order to seek a movement of the gospel in the city and to change the whole city with the gospel. So we exist basically to create those movements of the gospel. And if one day in the future, every city in Europe has a self-running, owned by local people, movement of the gospel through church planting within it, then City doesn't need to exist anymore. But until that day, it needs a network or a movement like City to help those people to create those movements of the gospel. This is the vision of City Europe. Well, City Europe is all about helping people who have a shared vision or want to achieve something that they need help with. So it is, if you want to plant a church, either you are a church planter or someone who wants to be part of a church planting project, or if you and your church have the vision to plant a church, to send someone out to plant a church in a city, and maybe in your city or another city, then City Europe can help you. We are able to help you to first connect you to other leaders in your city or region to get some support there in relationship, in asking questions, in a learning community and something like that. We can help you through the way we train you, how we connect you with a gospel coach, how there's a lot of material, a lot of things that we can help you with specific question, but mainly it is a lot about the relationships. So we can help you to connect you with other people all over Europe or in your city or in your region that help you to plant that church. We believe if you want to plant a church in a city in Europe, then you shouldn't do that alone. You shouldn't do that alone on your own. You need a team, and your team and you need some people around you that support you. So in the best case, you need someone who becomes your mentor, and you're kind of an apprentice or a trainee. You need a trainer, or someone who, or in the best case, actually, there's a learning community that gets trained by someone who's an equipped trainer, and you need a gospel coach. So these are the three relationships that are at least the ones that we would suggest. Sometimes they're not there, but that would be the best case scenario. Saying all of that, we want to support people who want to plant churches or who want to send out church planters, and all the way from identifying, assessing, training, coaching, mentoring, sending out, supporting, multiplying a church. All of that. We want to be a supportive network and movement around that path. And we're quite experienced, and I think we have high quality material and good trained people who can help you on the way. And if you think that is something we can help you with, just connect through our website, connect through our social media, or connect locally with the leaders who are part of City Europe, and we are very eager to help everyone possible who is about creating movements of the gospel in the cities of Europe through planting churches.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our live stream tonight. Unfortunately, tonight we had a little bit of a coup within City to City Europe. Instead of Stephan, Pues, our director, hosting this conversation, I said I will do it, and so I can ask him questions, and also Evgeny Bakhmutsky, sorry, Evgeny, questions as well. Before I start a conversation and introduce you guys, I want to say welcome to everybody. Thank you for joining us live or watching this conversation later throughout the week. And also congratulations to all women. Today's Women's Day, right? So maybe a first question to our men here tonight. Have you done anything like special, like give flowers to your wife or something?
It's a very special day in Russia, especially in the former Soviet Union. It's a less and less political. It's a more and more celebrating women around us. Good. Just praising God for them, just giving credit for their efforts and assistance, love, support, care. And we had an amazing day today with my family and with other family too. Just praising God for.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
Well, I will celebrate the most important women in my life, my wife, tomorrow, because it's her birthday. So I'm saving all the flowers, everything else for her tomorrow.
That's nice. That's special. Yeah, and today is my sister's birthday, so I also wrote it to her. So I congratulate her. But I'm excited for our conversation tonight. Our topic is our stories. We're going to delve in stories, like what are encouraging examples for evangelism in Europe. So we want to talk about, we've talked about in past City to City live streams. We talk about challenges, why is sharing the gospel so hard in Europe. We talk about death. How is the European mindset weakening our witness? We've talked about what are fresh approaches about to share the gospel. And today we're talking about stories, and we want to explore examples of things happening in our own cities right here, and also things we've seen throughout the network. And I can also mention right from the start that we're having a Q&A. So you guys, as you guys are plugging in on Facebook or YouTube, you can welcome to leave a question, and we're very glad to address those questions. And also a word about City to City, who is hosting this conversation, right? Our vision is to create movements of the gospel in the cities of Europe by doing three things: helping local leaders, planting churches, and developing city networks. So it's a very exciting vision. And within that, for the past year and a half, there's a book about our approach. We're having a group of leaders who formed an evangelism project. So in which we talk about what evangelism in Europe. We're having conversations like this, writing blog articles, and a number of things. So you guys can very, very welcome to explore that and see what is going on. So let me introduce our guests, though. So as we start, so Stephan Pues is the director of City to City Europe, and also the founder of a church plant in Europe, in Frankfurt, called Nordsternkirche. Is that right?
That's right.
Wow, your German is very perfect.
I won't be able to pronounce the name of your church in Russian, Evgeny, but Evgeny was born in Siberia, right? Mm-hmm. And you started a church in Moscow, and for Moscow called Russian Bible Church. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Now, I'm very glad to have you guys here with me tonight. So I thought of a warm-up question before we dive into the big topic. So if you found yourself all by yourself in an island, in a remote island, and could choose just one European cuisine, one type of food to eat every day on that island, which cuisine would you choose?
Wow. I think Russian ravioli.
Okay. All right.
Pelmeni.
Good.
Or good. Russian pancakes.
Good. I haven't tried those yet.
Well, my wife, or we got a noodle machine for Christmas for our family. So the Italian cuisine is right now very important at our home, and we really enjoy it. So there's good pasta that I do really like.
Good. I appreciated Evgeny's answer, but Stephan's was the better question. So if you mention Italian food and you get thumbs up from my end, I think I'll choose Italian food as well.
You know, René, you could not be objective. You never tried these ones, which I mentioned.
Yeah, I haven't. You gotta invite me to Moscow so I can have some ravioli. And, look forward to that. That's true.
I'm coming, René. You can join me on the trip to Moscow.
Okay, we can do that together. Yeah, that'll be fun. That'll be fun.
Good.
All right. So, okay. So let's go to the first question, so we can start exploring the topic. So I'd love to hear like a story or two you might have about attempting to share the gospel in Europe. Either stories with things ended up well or didn't end up well, but so we can explore what is happening on the ground and what we can learn from practitioners who are doing it right now.
Yeah, well, let me start, because one of the beauties of my job is that I have the sometimes ability, not in Corona, but before and after, to travel to different places in Europe. And it is amazing to see in the different cities and the different approaches. It is something that we value in City City, is that we want to share the gospel. So we want to plant churches that are really creative and active about sharing the gospel with everyone around them, but also they're quite innovative, because one of our values is contextualization, so that there's no model of, or like a typical way how cities churches should look like. They're all different, but they all should be somehow fitting to their context. And this actually creates a big variety of approaches even in evangelism. So one story I thought would be helpful to share is a church planter that I met right in the middle of Athens, the city in Greece, and he is a educated artist. He studied cartoon painting, so that was his major at his study, and he went to Athens, planted a church there, and then he thought, well, how can I reach out to the people here around me? And he began by meeting people from his neighborhood and just going to them and said, can I paint you? So could I, can I paint you? And can I a little bit write down the kind of in a cartoon way, can I sketch your story? So can I capture the stories of my neighborhood in a picture of you and in a story? And then I think he painted a couple of dozen people for a good group of people from all around his neighborhood, and he made an exhibition in his church about all the paintings he made. So and then he had an opportunity while he was painting the people to share the gospel with them and to kind of involve the story of his own story and the gospel to them. So it was a big door opener to really listen to people. I think that's a key that I see in many places, is that before you tell something, you need to listen to. You need to really show honest interest, not only in the people as an object to share the gospel with, but more really into the person. That I thought was a beautiful, creative way to share the gospel, through painting people's picture and telling their
Paying
story.
attention to them.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's one very creative approach, I thought.
Wonderful. No, thank you. Oh, very exciting. Very exciting. What about you, Evgeny?
René, I have a million stories to tell. And in the very beginning, I mentioned that many pastors and church leaders, they used to use different methodology, quite similar. And they believe that if they would do one or another project, it's going to work, it's going to give them breakthrough. European reality says that it's not going to work. Personal evangelism, intentional evangelism, where you live and where you work, this is a way to go. Our church primarily growing through people who come into faith because of personal witness of people whom they're working with, or they're studying with, or they're living with. And I've been asked many, many times, give us a project or methodology. And I need to say, there's no one really. Some may use like this approach, what Stephan mentioned. For instance, today is International Women's Day, and many people now buying and selling flowers. So some church women, they very creative, good florists. They offer their help, but through their help, they opened many doors to have personal conversations. Some invited their neighbors to have a good meal, to celebrate women's around. And it's opened a new door to show how gospel lifted up women much higher than our society, feministic and other movements really offering right now. So it's about not just creativity, it's about just helping your members, your fellow believers to be intentional and to look around. We have millions of really options, and they're already given to us by the Lord. We just need to start to use them.
Yeah, I totally want to underline what Evgeny said. I think one of the big mistakes in the maybe past decades in the church in Europe was that someone thought, well, here's this one way to evangelize, or here's these 5 steps or these 7 things. And if I just train my people in a seminar on a Saturday afternoon to use that 5-minute approach, then, and they just do it with everyone around them, it will work. I think that is not just, it is not just only taking away all the creativity and intentionality. It is not honoring the gospel, I think, because the gospel is much more and much deeper than just one question to one answer in life, or something you can just give in 5 minutes. I'm still trying to learn it after so many decades. And I think it is something you need to really deeply own and be able to apply to every situation. But I think creative ideas are very helpful, but there's not one method. I totally agree.
Okay, wonderful. No, thank you for the stories and for that take, Stephan. I agree that it's not like a formula or something which you automatically put into practice. At the same time, so a question to you guys. If you can use a number of different approaches and creative approaches, what are some similarities that you see or foundational principles that you see which are important ingredients? And maybe feel free to add examples or stories which can then explore this, so we can explore this topic a little bit more.
Yeah, I really like this question, René. I think one of the most important thing in my personal experience is to help your believers, your brothers and sisters in Christ, to apply the gospel to their personal lives. Because when people understand the gospel and in such a way they can apply it, their day-by-day living, they can share the gospel naturally with their neighbors. For instance, one girl came to Pues, and she happened to work in the Moscow government. And they needed to give a report to national government. So she'd been working for a high-profile leader, and because she'd been so maybe active and intellectual and effective, she got a bunch of free time. So she went to her boss. He is one of the high-profile leaders of Moscow city, and she offered her help. And this boss said to her, "What are you doing? Nobody really helping anyone for free. Everybody trying to avoid extra work, but you offering yourself. What's behind that?" And she said, I just recently believed in Jesus, who offered himself for my sake, and I want to help others. And he was amazed. He was amazed. He just want to know more about such a church and such a person who believes such a Jesus. So who taught her such a methodology? Really, Jesus himself. But it's about applying gospel to your personal life.
First living it out. Wonderful.
Super much agree. I think that is so key, that we understand the gospel ourselves. We're deep and clear. So I think that's a key factor, I think, to really get it right. There's a lot of fogginess or even mistakes in understanding the gospel. And I think the church, in some sense, and I see that in the city network, is somehow turning away about, taking most theological care about all these things that are more on the edges of theology. The big discussions in the theology in the past decades or so have often been about things that I would say are not core gospel things, but we're coming more and more back to come to a deeper understanding, a more clearer understanding of the gospel. I think that's important. as Evgeny said, that everybody should have, not just the pastor, but everybody in the church should have a good understanding about how does forgiveness work? What is actually redemption? And these kind of things. And if that is something that I understand deeply, then I will love it passionately. And then I will love to apply it to my own life, to my brothers and sisters' lives, and to the whole city. And that is, I think, somehow the key that I see. I think also one thing I want to mention, maybe just give an example again, another story. I think it is important to build bridges towards gospel conversations. So sometimes it just needs a little more time. Sometimes there are these moments when you can just, the Lord opens the door and you can share the gospel with someone on a train or, I don't know, in the first conversation. But normally it takes a while, for me at least, to get to know someone and to create a situation where then a gospel conversation can happen. And one thing that we did here in our church plant to kind of build bridges towards conversations about the gospel with people is we did something called a spiritual roundtable. So we did that we invited people to 5 or 6 evenings about a topic that was not a typical Christian topic, but it was something about spirituality. So we talked about the idea of God, the idea of faith, the idea of eternity, the idea of values and things like that. And we invited people, and then we the only preparation we did was we had a paper printed out for everyone with different quotes on it. And it was like some of the quotes were just, it was from Aristotle or from a modern politician or from very different worldviews, sometimes from even other religions. And then we included a Bible verse and some quote from maybe Martin Luther or something like that. So it was a very diverse, actually, list of quotes. And then we read through all the quotes, and then we started a discussion. Which of the quotes do you like most? Which one are you angry about, or something like that? So that was maybe kind of a pre-gospel conversation. Mm-hmm. And then at those conversations, which people really enjoyed, and we said, you don't have to be here if you want to be part of this conversation. You don't have to believe in Jesus at all to just come here, but we just want to share about these things. And that actually created an atmosphere. We had a couple of people coming to these roundtables who at the end, after the 6 weeks, said, well, I still don't really believe in your Jesus, but this was probably the best conversation about deep things in life I ever had with anyone. And I definitely want to have more of that. So I think creating these bridges towards gospel conversation is and being intentional about that seems to me important.
Okay. Mm-hmm. It's wonderful, Stephan. It's very encouraging. I love to hear about the example, the use of quotes, and get people talking. And I think it's if you give them some kind of context or process, something to plug into and to explore, even if they're not, even in the end they don't end up signing up for anything. I think it's very key. Here in Rome, we do something called Seekers Bible Study, in which we invite people for a series of weeks, and they come home, we have pizza, and then we talk about their spiritual journeys and Jesus, looking their key stories in the Gospels, like meeting the Samaritan woman or the parable of the prodigal son, these very basic stories. And out of those conversations, then it feels often like Jesus leaps off the page. It becomes a very living thing, very true thing. I can just share a quick story about that. We had a trio of people. One was a woman from Spain who moved here, brand new Christian, joined our church and moved to apartment just in my building on the same floor, in the door in front of us. And there lived 2 women, Mireille, who is French, and Roberta, who is Italian. And Paula, this Spaniard, started sharing the gospel with them. And so first Mireille started coming to church, and then Roberta, and they joined this Seekers Bible Study. And they used to come with slippers, like just crossing the hall to our apartment, coming. And eventually both of them gave their lives to Christ. And it was 3 beautiful decisions. So Paula, and then Mireille, and then Roberta. And one evening we climbed the elevator, out of the elevator, and there was worship music coming from their apartment. And I thought, oh, that's such a beautiful picture, right, of how Jesus reached one person, then another, in total 3 nations, but in the same building. And I thought, oh, the 5th floor here in our building is covered. So I think some kind of process, and also investing in relationships, as you guys are talking about, like the trust, and then demonstrating love and paying attention to them, and even the thing about Women's Day, as Evgeny mentioned, of flowers. And so I think it's some key ingredients, right? So another question for you guys, maybe I'll start with Evgeny. Would you say there are misunderstandings of the gospel today that prevent us from effective preaching? Like maybe the way we conceive the gospel itself, misunderstandings that maybe can harm the way we try to communicate or how we convey it.
It's a great question. I even wrote a book about it.
Oh, did you? Oh, really? What is the name of the book?
It's called Battle for the Gospel. Battle for the Gospel.
All right.
Yeah, I'm just describing different things that really prevent us. Like in Russian context, there are many misunderstandings. Like some people preaching gospel of problems, like God is gonna fix your problems. If you have problems, come to Jesus. If you don't have problems, there is no reason for you to come to Jesus. And it's, or some people preaching gospel of morality. It's all about ethics, moral. Some people preaching the gospel of unsaved soul, that you can be sure that God really accepting you. So I'm saying this gospel plus something, because it's not really a true gospel. And even though these people claim to be evangelicals, but they not experience transformational power of the gospel themselves, how they can share? So you need to help people to see these misunderstandings, to see consequences of these wrong understandings, and to show them how they can not just improve themselves, but really change the whole way of life. Many people, many evangelicals acting like religious, trying to earn God's favor through their own behavior and actions, deeds. How they're not really sure that God truly loved them, embraced them, accepted them. It's a disastrous reality, and what we see. And if you're not really sure in God's love, how you can share his love with others, how you can forgive, how you can graciously give yourself your own things. So it's a first level, really, help to explain and help people to understand their own hearts, where they are, what they do, how they live.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think one problem that I see, and that has a big application for what we're talking about today, is that at least here in my Central European part, I think a lot of people, even people who consider themselves to be Christians, they would doubt about the concept of being lost, or there's any lostness at all, either eternally or here, so that they're, this necessity. So the gospel somehow is a question. I mean, it is a question. It is the answer to all questions in life. But in some sense, there's a few questions. There's a set of questions that the gospel like really urgently talks to, and Jesus even talked to that. The eternal lostness of people, and then he being the savior, and the whole message of forgiveness and reconciliation and all substitution atonement of the cross is answering to the question of us being lost. But if you take away, even in us as a Christians, the problem, or that we're convinced that we and people are lost, and there's an urgency that we need to give the gospel. It's not just a benefit, to people that they hear the gospel as like something great, a good idea, like a good book on marriage that you should read. It makes your life a little better. It is the question that you need to answer in your life. It makes a huge difference. And
Stephan,
I think that is something where there's a lot of misunderstanding, or even weakness or wrongness in people's understanding of the gospel in relation to, are we lost actually? And if we are, then we need a savior. And that is, I think, a big problem why a lot of people then don't do evangelism.
Stephan, I'm just curious to know, do you think it's because of people don't understand depravity, total depravity of human beings.
Yeah, that's a part of it. It's a part of it. Here in Central and European, the whole idea about guilt is a big, stumbling block, and the personal guilt, the concept of sin, or even like an eternal, like that we have to give an account to a God or something. These are all concepts that are quite weird to people actually right now.
I agree. I think there's a tendency in some circles, and I see here in Italy, in post-Vatican II Catholicism, in terms of almost losing the traditional distinctives, and emphasizing a lot of the language of God is love. We should love our neighbors, call everybody brothers and sisters, and almost to the point that they say like there is no almost no talk anymore about sin or the need for salvation or Christ. It's just like affirmation of society of everybody, right? Which is it's a commendable feeling, but I can see how some of the doctrines may be lost there, right? And so another question then, so for you guys, so maybe now starting with Stephan, like as you visit and hear a number of things from around Europe, love for you to listen to some more stories. I share something from Athens, anything that might see like in other cities, or helpful examples for us to consider for our own places.
There's a lot of great stories. I just had a good conversation with someone from Amsterdam, and he shared that now in the Corona crisis, they joined a group in the city who are serving people who are in lack of food, but they would not go to the normal like social where the city would, because they're actually, I mean, normally they would be like owners of a business, but now they lost their business, and they actually have like real social needs. So they joined, and I think that's often a good story or a good point to begin a relationship or actually share something about the gospel with people. And that's just one example. There are many examples, and probably Evgeny could tell them from Moscow too, where Christians join others in the city, or even themselves do something about the social needs in their city. And they're great examples. Here in Frankfurt, we have a big work about reaching out to the ladies working in the red light district or other things. I think that is from the very early time. This is a door opener for the church. The church has always been strong to help the needs of the people in their city around them. We are the somehow. There are some quotes from the early Kaisers, that they actually didn't understand why the Christians help even other people from other religions so very much, and that gives credibility to our gospel, because our gospel is a message of a God who came down and not just saved us for heaven, but he helped us a lot. I mean, he healed people, and he helped them with their social need, with their economy, with all these things. And I think that's something. A lot of stories, and we should be creative and intentional also about that. We should not just help people to evangelize them, but we should make a rich connection between the two. I mean, if we only help them without sharing ever the gospel, that's also not very helpful. And I think there are many creative stories around that, and I think that gives credibility to what we then say about the gospel.
Thank you, Stephan. Anything that comes to mind for you from Moscow, Evgeny, or other parts of Russia, maybe perhaps?
No, there are many stories. I think this COVID situation really opened an even wider door for home hospitality. Your neighbors can't go anywhere, so your home might become like a restaurant or a playground or a special social club, and you may invite your neighbors to join. And people hunger for deeper conversations. For instance, less and less Russian people would love to use vodka, alcoholic vodka, for socializing. They just want to come to you
and be together,
spend time together. And our church, we're doing with partner with other church, which did our church plant. We do rafting in the northern part of Russia, close to Finland border. And many men especially, they're really willing to join because they know we are Christians, we're not going to get drunk. We're going to enjoy and we're going to really get through, we're going to survive. And we have many men, they come into faith. Because when you really survive in such a rough way, something coming together, and you study Bible every day in words and you practice in deeds. So I see that many our members now are surrounded by many people just hunger for fellowship, something real, just real fellowship. And also because we have such a high rate of divorce and Christian families open their hearts to help others. And also being a good example, people asking, why you kind of living such a long time together? Why haven't children together? It's really given many reasons to great conversations. And even during pandemic, we opened a Christian consulting center. We have hundreds of requests, different type. And it's not just consulting, but also helping. Because if you come into life with people with the word of God and also with the hands, because we truly Christ's body, helping. We are his hands and legs in this city, and we're serving others around.
Okay. Thank you. Wonderful, wonderful to hear those examples with those stories. Imagine those images. And now we're receiving questions from people from the Q&A. So I'm very glad to also address some of the questions people are sending us. You're very welcome to still send us some more questions. People who are following the conversation. So the first question you already started to touch it at the beginning, but let me read it. Someone asked us, do you have an encouraging example for evangelism, especially in the recent past during the coronavirus crisis, where church plans to use this crisis as a chance to reach people with the gospel?
Yeah, there's a church network in Budapest, and they actually wrote a little a course about how to respond to a crisis. And it was not I don't think it was very specifically gospel on the front door, but it was more how can we and opening discussion circles or one-on-one discussions about and taking this course on how do we react in the crisis about I didn't read it because I don't speak Hungarian, so I could read it, but it was, for example, about fear, about security and things like that. And then they designed something that was at the end they had questions that were pointing towards the gospel. So I see quite some creativity around that all over Europe in terms of it's a great opportunity to talk about the gospel. I don't think it actually did or does draw people nearer to ask about God. Maybe that will still happen, but I do see Christians taking opportunities like that.
Mm-hmm. I see in a Russian reality, more and more people using internet. Actually, Russia very covered with great internet, better than in US, and sadly to say in Europe.
Okay.
Mobile internet even. Yeah, you'll be shocked when you
have to invite us there so we can try it out.
Yeah, you will see that. You will experience that. But anyway, more people not just using internet, but they trust in fellowship, doing fellowship through internet. Mm-hmm. So what many churches now are doing, they kind of open a door to their church services for secular people to observe. Yeah. So they really invited them, come and see. And they invite their small groups, not just in person, but through internet. So you kind of, you can silently join to that group, like through Zoom, and observe and listen to without even kind of revealing yourself anonymously, but you can see and observe. And we even have a new membership class through internet, through Zoom, and people come in and join. Okay. So you just kind of give a link to people.
And I hope, Evgeny, I really hope that this is development that will stay after Corona. I do hope that in a healthy way, Corona will have helped us to learn to go more into the virtual world with the good gospel. I hope that will stay. Yeah.
I think
Another
so.
question?
We've seen something similar here in Rome. Before we just published like sermons independently on YouTube, but starting doing online services, we saw a number of people who were, started to connect with the church, both in Rome and from other parts of the country. People from small towns or places without a church. It was very encouraging, and people who are seekers, who are just like there's a lady who wrote us, for example, who had just like a gone through a divorce with her husband, who had been unfaithful with her, and now he was with another woman, and she was really struggling with to forgive him and the new woman. And she saw this sermon on forgiveness and just wrote us to us, like she called us actually, and crying and sharing her story. So I think, as you mentioned, like people are looking for answers on the internet, right? And even like very heartfelt problems they have. And what we're doing now, as we're planning out this new post-pandemic phase, we're creating a second website, which we're calling, the name of our church is Opera. So we're calling opera.tv, in which we just putting online services, and then discipleship courses, conversations, worship videos, a number of things people can find online and can get their spirits nourished throughout the week. So I think we can try to be creative, both being 100% local and physical and meeting people, but also making use of the internet and all this.
It sounds kind of strange, but more people willing to meet in person.
Yep. Yeah, I think it becomes the front door of the church online. So the foyer, like the first impression. And once they see that and they see what is it about, then they're more open to come and to an actual service.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And so a question from, actually this one is a comment from the chat. Maybe Stephan can answer. I think it comes from someone in Germany. Stephan says, in Germany, I see many Christians not sure of their identity in Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, they do not see the power of Christ in them. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot right around that, but I do think that's true. I think that who are we in Christ? What did Christ actually do for us? The Christocentric theology, that is something I think the church in Germany was really rich about, some generations about. I mean, if you wanted to read something about gospel and Christ, and even international people would, like some generations ago, would pick the German theologians. If you read today about things like that, you almost don't find them anymore. It is a tragedy here in Germany, or maybe Central Europe, that theology is not really circling around the main things anymore, mostly, but is doing a lot of stuff about other topics. And I mean, I think theology should be about everything, every topic, but the Christ-centered life and my identity in Him should be something that should be clear from the pulpit, from the things that I read in the Bible and in my conviction. And I agree. I was often terrified when I interviewed church planters, potential church planters, that came to us and said, we want to plant, can you help me plant a church? And one of the first questions I always ask them, well, then, can you tell me the gospel? Just, I give you 10 minutes. Explain to me what the gospel is. That's almost every time my first assessment question, because I think it's the only key question in life, right? And for every theologian. And I'm really shocked sometimes how thin that is, and how not clear. And if the people that are theologically trained don't have that anymore in a really rich way, how should anybody else? And I think that is a huge problem. I totally agree.
Thank you. Wonderful. Great reflection. So a final question for the two of you as we close. We have a couple of minutes still. The question is, do you think there is hope? Should Christians in Europe be brave about sharing the gospel?
Absolutely. Right, Evgeny?
For me, if you believe the gospel, hope, it's a natural thing. Because of God is mighty to save, and He is saving around us, and the gospel is so effective to transform our own lives. It's happening every day, and we see how God is saving people around us. disappearing from themselves.
I agree. I think that I think there's so much going on, like so many people who are beneath the veneer of cynicism and lack of interest. They're really hungry. They want to find out. And just in a couple of days, we're starting a new seekers group. We have a number of people who are signing up and just want to hear more. And we're trying to make that happen, even in the midst of the pandemic. So I think there's a lot of hope and a lot of people who are really searching for God nowadays.
I actually see that more people started to understand that nothing can satisfy their souls except Jesus. And especially here in Moscow, in a wealthy city, people just come in to make their fame, to earn money, to get higher position, better education, better future. And as soon as they reach something, they see that they're not really satisfied, something really missing. And we come in not with a gospel of problems, even gospel really fix many problems, but most important, change our hearts, our identity, as Stephan mentioned too. And so I think the gospel is the only real answer to reality of our days, especially in Europe. Cynic Europe, fed up with everything Europe, agnostic Europe, skeptical Europe. I think gospel the only real answer, authentic, honest, and penetrating and really saving answer.
Yeah, I think there are two main reasons to be hopeful. One is I see a church all over Europe. Not everybody in all churches, but I do. When we look back at the 15 years that City Europe is now active in Europe, it is amazing what actually happens, and far beyond our network. I see a lot of young leaders hungry to plant churches that are really gospel-centered, that are creative, they are contextualized, they're intentional about being missional, things like that. So, and this is growing. So I think there is decline in the church, yes, and that's probably will stay for a while. But there's also growth and hope. So there's a good set of young leaders that are attracting others to join them and to plant churches and to build city networks. So I see an active church all over Europe that is very, very intentional about being, share the gospel. The other thing, and honestly, I have to say, the gospel itself. I mean, just the other day, I had a conversation with someone from the United States, and they mentioned in this, you probably heard that 1,000 times. Well, Europe is hard ground, isn't it? And I said, well, with all my heart, I disagree. Because I don't think that, there's something like hard ground for the gospel. I mean, how should the gospel find hard? I mean, I don't think that God has a harder time to convince a European about the gospel. The gospel is still, like Paul said, the power of God saving people. And God is still sovereign, even over Europeans. I mean, if God wants to, then in the next decades, we will see a bigger revival in Europe than ever before. So my reason for hope is that the gospel is still the same old power of God, the same beautiful, the same powerful as ever before. And we should not think a little bit smaller about it. And God is still there. So I think there's total hope. And I see big signs in the European church that really give me hope that we have a big opportunity and also before us, and that God will do something in Europe. He already is doing that.
Oh, amen. Thank you for this encouragement. And it fills my heart. I think there's so many good things going on, so many new leaders coming up as well. And to close this conversation, I would love to invite people to continue to look into the resources the evangelism project are producing. Like some, there are wonderful conversations just like this, which you can find on our YouTube page, and conversations from leaders all around Europe. I think that's one of the strengths, I believe, from city to city Europe. You won't hear like someone from one country, like all the perspective comes from there, but a number of leaders from a number of countries adding to the mix, and Tim Keller also being part of that conversation. You can also check our website, citytocityeurope.com. com. And also the blog for articles about the topic. And a big announcement is that we're going to have a conference in May, in a couple months time, and it will be a virtual conference. But I saw some of the preparations. It's very nice. So it's not what you think. It will be cool. It will be very nice. Some of the people will be meeting in London. Whoever is able to be there. I'll be based in London, but then we'll also do it virtually. And we're doing a roundtable here in Rome, and encourage people to meet in their cities and watch it together, or watch by themselves and connect with others online. So thank you so much for being with us. We're very appreciative. God bless you, and see you guys next time.
Bye-bye.
Welcome.